Hello.
Hello,
What's your name?
I'm Jayne.
Hi Jayne, and where did you grow up and where do you live now?
I grew up in the northeast of England and now I live just north of London in Berkhamsted.
Beautiful. And what's been the predominant contemplative practice of your life?
Oh, yoga, right the way from age 18.
From age 18?
Age 18, somebody gave me a Barbara Curry video, which was quite a revelation to me that somebody probably in her 60s at the time could lift her leg up straight in front of her body. At the same age, I could only lift my toe about 2 inches from the floor. And I had a dance with yoga between that age and currently, with a few little diversions into a bit of Pilates and a bit of Zumba. But yoga has been the practice that has drawn me back.
What was it that compelled an 18-year-old to follow a 60-year-old's video?
Do you know, that's a really good question, and I don't have a good answer for that, other than I was literally intrigued by what this amazing woman could do with her body. And I'm not a competitive sports person. I used to get stuck in goal in hockey because I just used to close my eyes. So it was something that I could do without competing that actually made me feel intrigued and curious and playful and a bit of a daredevil, actually. Yes, that's probably why.
And was it the sort of thing in those early years when you were a young woman that was something that you just did and that was the focus, that you didn't do anything else, or?
No, it was just a little bit of light-hearted, playful exploration. It wasn't really probably until I was working, when yoga classes in church halls were a big thing, and I really found them really relaxing, especially I had a really stressful corporate job. And then navigating, moving around the country and getting married, and there was a gap in yoga when I couldn't find a yoga teacher, so I did a little bit of Pilates, and then I found yoga again, and I really found yoga again in the year 2000 when we moved to Berkhamsted, and I worked with a beautiful yoga teacher, a hatha yoga teacher. And then I found Ashtanga yoga in 2010, and that just lit up my spirit in a way that nothing else had before. And I immersed myself in the practice. In fact, my first Ashtanga teacher said to me it was a 6-day practice, and I took her word for it, and I did 6-day practice until I looked around some of the others in the group. They're going, oh no, we don't do that. But I did it, and I did it because it felt incredible for me. It felt like an act of self-care. I don't want to say it felt like coming home, but there was something deeply that connected with my sense of self and my sense of moving my body and an inner awareness of myself and my... I have dyslexia and I'm clumsy. They used to call me Calamity Jane. I used to drop everything, and there was something about the stability of the practice, being stable in my body, that felt really nourishing, and so I stayed with it, and I did make it a 6-day-a-week practice. Probably all the way through to being a teacher, where it's actually really hard to make it a 6-day practice, but I try my best to balance the physical practice with the meditation or the study so that it still is a 6-day practice.
So it sounds like it really kicked into something that you hadn't kind of, like you said before, you felt you were playing it, there was a light thing, and then there was something else that kind of it pointed to. What do you think that was?
Well, I don't think I really knew what that was until the pandemic, because for many years I just knew that I felt well when I practiced yoga. I knew that I was a nicer person when I practiced yoga. I knew that I felt strong in my body and I felt a sense of agency, and it felt like an act of self-care to do yoga. But it wasn't until the pandemic when I actually realised there's all these other layers of philosophy, Sanskrit, chanting, all of this stuff. And of course the pandemic enabled us to really explore and travel around the world and really expose outside of the bubble of our own practice before then. And I was actually pretty shocked and overwhelmed when I realised I'd missed. I thought at first I'd totally missed the point in just seeing it as a physical practice. And then I realised I hadn't missed the point, it was layered and nuanced. And that I was able to explore and layer up this new information on the basis of a very strong physical practice.
That's it, right? Because you had however many years of practice before, and then suddenly the certain time and the place and the situations arise where you can lay new information on top of that long time of just enjoying it, practicing it for different ways, right?
Yeah. The other thing I would say is that, of course, I made this incredible connection that my career as a visual artist was all about the breath, recording the human breath, the expressive qualities of the human breath, how we create interactions through our breath carried by the voice or interpersonal connections. And so I was also able to anchor that element into my physical practice and make the realisation that, of course, I'm working with the breath visually and in my body, and now philosophically as well.
Was something that you were doing already?
I was doing it already, yes.
How long have you been doing that for?
I started art college as a mature student in 2006, and I did my masters at the Slade. Oh, actually earlier than that. I did my masters at 2008 to 2010 in the Slade. And
at what point did you begin to think you wanted to study the breath within your framework of your art?
It was quite so my first exploration of art was about entropy, about sort of decay and looking at, how impermanence. And I was really, one of the modules on my course was to look at doing a site-specific piece of work, and I decided to work with a local hospice. And they were raising money for a building. They didn't have the building, so I couldn't work with the building because the building didn't exist. So I worked with the patients, inpatients in the hospice. And I worked with their breath. I worked with their breath on candle, on light sources, and then this became part of my practice and my study in my academic. I took it on. And as one of my tutors at the Slade said, this is a lifetime's work, Jane, and it is a lifetime's work. Probably more recently, I've been working really collaboratively with my practice. I've worked with organisations during the pandemic, bringing yoga and art together, and supporting well-being in that way for some big organisations. It's been really fulfilling.
What were the links that you made between your personal practice of studying the breath as a yoga practitioner, when you really started to see that that's what the practice was about, and the study working with the to a certain degree the people in the hospice and the expression of art?
Well, it just all clicked together, and I was thinking, of course, it's obvious. It's obvious that actually all we have is the breath. And I think I probably was particularly inspired by the courage of people in maybe the last few days, hours of their life, to come into a dark room with me and share their precious breath and leave it as a legacy to their family, as a visual record of a moment in time. I still feel it really moving about that time I spent with those. And it was playful, and it brought... And every time I tried to move away from working with the breath, because of course I ended up working as an art practitioner within the hospice, and I brought clay in it. No, don't. Bring it back to the breath. What happened to that lovely breath? We want to work with our breath. And so I made the breath the anchor of my art practice, and I just started subverting high art practices. So I etched the breath instead of etching, and I mean, I'm playful in my practice, I'm playful in my art practice, I'm playful in my teaching. That's what, and I hopefully I'm learning to be playful with my breath.
Was there anything that you learned through this artwork, through working with those beautiful people, that you learned about your own breath?
Yes, that I don't breathe very well. And my lovely first Ashtanga teacher said exactly the same. She said the reason you're working visually with the breath is because you're not breathing yourself.
So how did it make you breathe?
It's made me really aware of how often I hold my breath, or I don't exhale fully, and I rush to the next inhale. In case it's not there. So the working with pranayama practice has been life-changing, and then bringing that back into my asana practice. And I feel like learning to teach has given me that awareness. And we've talked about this. You teach the things you most need to learn. And I'm teaching it through... So I had a residency in the Royal Brompton and Harefield Hospital, and I was working in pulmonary rehab with them. And the physiotherapist was saying, this is great, we're making it visible, you're helping patients to see. Firstly, they have a breath. People with COPD don't always know they have a breath. So we're making it visible. They start to trust that their breath is there. And through me seeing that process, I'm trusting my breathing process too. It's been a lovely journey.
Beautiful. And so when you got to the pandemic, and that suddenly all of this new information came alive on top of like what you've been doing in your art work, how did that shift and change you?
Well, it was overwhelming at first. And then I breathed through that, and I did totally immerse myself, and then I realised I had to pull back and start layering up and consolidating and integrating, and so I haven't answered your question, but it's a good question. I continue to learn.
There's something about this. You talked very much about when you got to the pandemic, that you realised that there was so much more to immerse yourself in.
Yes.
And it's like when we do immerse ourselves into and really go for it, which I watched you do, there's a real kind of new way of seeing yourself that can open up. And I'm just really interested in how that shift, because when you start to see the philosophy, it gives everything a new lens.
Yes, so I can give you a practical example of where we've worked together in that way. So obviously we could talk for hours about the philosophy, but let's just give an example of where you brought a piece of philosophy off the mat that I took onto the mat, and then I've had to take off the mat and really consider. So about 18 months ago, I have an attachment, probably an unhealthy attachment to my journey to Scorpion. I love it. It makes me feel alive, it lights me up, it makes me feel strong. So we were working together, and I was just expecting to take my body into this pose in the best way I could. And before I went anywhere, you looked me in the eye and you said, "What do you stand for, Jayne?" Wow, it hit me like a rocket. And so I took my hands to the earth and I felt my body process what it is I stand for. And it was probably the lightest exploration of prana and apana and radiance that I'd felt. It meant that the asana wasn't just an asana, it was a life adventure. Yeah. So that's an example. And then from that time, I've been thinking about that since. What is it I stand for?
And what did you find
Okay.
that it was that you stood for?
So
or you're still processing that you stand for?
I'm still processing this, but I know that I know I stand for justice. I stand for community. I stand for compassion and self-compassion. And I stand for love.
Beautiful. And it's something that you still, I suppose, uncover.
Yes, there's layers and layers of standing up for advocacy. I stand for being a mother. I stand for being a teacher. I stand for being a student. I stand for being a wife, a daughter, a sister.
Beautiful. And so if there was one thing that you've learned for all of this different areas of yourself and this unveiling that you'd want to share with others, what would it be?
I'd say to take it steadily and let the meandering of the journey unfold without worrying about the destination. And that it's all there just in the breath. So there's no need to push towards destination. And that's a journey that's something I probably wouldn't have listened to at the beginning, but it's definitely something I know now. It's a knowing that it's all there in each breath. Everything that you need is in each breath.
Thank you, Jayne. Thank you for that.
Thank you.